The first thing I noticed was not that she was pregnant. It was that everyone at the table went quiet when she walked in. That kind of quiet has a shape. It leans forward. It waits for someone to be cruel. I was 32, old enough to recognize a setup and young enough to still be disappointed by the people who arranged it. My name is Miles Hart, and at the time I managed a small custom furniture shop in Portland, which meant I spent most of my days sanding walnut, arguing with clients about stain colors, and pretending I wasn't lonely enough to accept blind dates from friends who thought emotional maturity was a brand of oat milk. My friend Ryan had been on me for weeks. Double date, he kept saying. No pressure, just dinner. You need to get back out there. Back out there was his polite way of saying, your fiancé left 2 years ago and you still eat takeout over the sink like a man in a documentary about bad decisions. So I said yes. That Friday night, I arrived at Marlowe's, a dim little Italian place with exposed brick walls and candles on every table. Ryan was already there with his girlfriend Kelsey, both of them wearing expressions so innocent they practically came with receipts. You made it, Ryan said, too brightly. I own shoes, I said. Sometimes I use them. Kelsey laughed, then glanced toward the entrance. That was when she walked in. She wore a dark green wrap dress, ankle boots, and a tan coat open over a very obvious pregnancy bump. Her hair was chestnut brown, clipped loosely at the back of her neck, with a few pieces falling around her face like she'd stopped fighting them halfway through the day. She scanned the room, found our table, and for 1 second, her mouth tightened. Not fear, recognition, like she'd already guessed the joke before hearing the punchline. Ryan's knee bumped mine under the table. Kelsey pressed her lips together. And I understood. They had picked a pregnant woman for my blind date. Not because they thought we'd connect, because they thought it would be hilarious to watch me react. I could almost hear the version they'd tell later. Miles showed up expecting romance and got a baby shower. The woman reached the table anyway. That alone impressed me. Hi, she said. I'm Harper Wells. Her voice was calm, but her hand rested for a second on the back of the empty chair, as if she needed to decide whether dignity was worth staying for. I stood. Not halfway, not awkwardly. I stood like a man who'd been raised right at least twice a year. Miles Hart, I said, and pulled her chair out. I'm glad you came. Ryan coughed into his water. Harper looked at me then. Really looked. Her eyes were hazel, sharp at the edges, tired in the middle. She studied my face like she was checking for sarcasm and found none. Are you? She asked. Yeah, I said. I was starting to worry I'd have to spend the evening listening to Ryan explain cryptocurrency again. Harper blinked once, then smiled. It wasn't a big smile, it was better than that. It was reluctant, private, like she hadn't planned on giving me anything and I'd stolen a corner of it by accident. Ryan forced a laugh. Hey, I made one comment. You said blockchain could save the restaurant industry, Kelsey said. It could. The breadsticks are doing fine without it, Harper said, sitting down. I liked her immediately, not because she was pregnant, not because she'd been put in an uncomfortable position, because she had walked into a room that wanted her to be a punchline and sharpened herself into a person instead. The waiter came by. Ryan ordered wine for the table, then made a face. Oh, right, he said, looking at Harper's stomach. Guess not for everyone. There it was, the first little cut. Kelsey stared into her menu. Harper's hand shifted under the table. I saw her thumb rub against the side of her finger. I closed my menu. Then make it 2 glasses and a sparkling water with lime, I told the waiter. And bring her the best bread you have before anyone at this table says something worse. The waiter's eyebrows lifted, but he nodded. Harper turned her head toward me slowly. Something worse? She asked. I'm optimistic, but not reckless. This time her smile stayed. Ryan leaned back. Relax, man, it's just dinner. Good, I said. Then let's have dinner. For the first 10 minutes, Ryan tried to steer the night like nothing had happened. He asked Harper what she did, but in that tone people use when they already think they know the answer. I teach 3rd grade, she said. That must be exhausting right now, Kelsey offered. Harper shrugged. So is explaining fractions to children whose parents think homework is a government conspiracy, but I manage. I nearly choked on my water. She glanced at me. You okay, Miles? I'm fine, just didn't expect fractions to take a political turn. They always do eventually. The banter came easily after that. Not fake date easy, real easy. The kind where you toss a line across the table and the other person catches it without looking down first. I learned she hated mushrooms, loved old houses, taught herself to fix leaky faucets from videos online, and believed anyone who used the phrase "no offense" should legally have to stop talking. I told her I built furniture, mostly tables, bookcases, and cabinets. So you make things that last, she said. I looked down at my hands, rough around the knuckles, a faint line of glue near my wrist. I try. Something softened in her expression. I like that, she said. It was a small sentence, barely anything, but the way she said it made the room narrow for a second, made the candle between us feel warmer than it had a moment before. Then Ryan ruined it. So, Harper, he said, swirling his wine, I've got to ask, how does dating work when you're... He waved vaguely at her stomach. Kelsey whispered, Ryan. What? It's a fair question. Harper set her fork down. The table froze again. I felt heat climb up the back of my neck. Not embarrassment. Anger. The controlled kind. The kind that makes you speak more quietly. But before I could answer for her, Harper looked straight at Ryan and said, Usually better than this. I laughed once before I could stop myself. Harper's eyes flicked to mine, and there it was again. That private smile. Only this time, it had a spark in it. Ryan's face reddened. I didn't mean... Yes, I said. You did. The words landed hard enough that even the couple at the next table glanced over. Ryan stared at me. Come on, Miles. No, don't come on me. I leaned back, keeping my voice calm. You invited me here because you thought watching me handle this would be funny. Kelsey closed her eyes. Harper went very still. Ryan gave a weak chuckle. That's not... It is, I said. And the worst part is, you didn't just make me the joke. You made her one too. Nobody moved. I turned to Harper. I'm sorry. You didn't deserve that. She held my gaze for a long second. Most people would have left. I wouldn't have blamed her. Instead, she picked up her napkin, folded it neatly beside her plate, and said, Apology accepted, but only from you. I almost smiled. Ryan muttered, This is insane. No, Harper said, turning to him. Insane is thinking pregnancy cancels out a woman's right to be treated like someone worth impressing. That did it. Something in my chest shifted. Not pity, not heroics. Attraction, clean and unmistakable. She was beautiful, yes, but not in the fragile way people sometimes mean. She was beautiful like a lit match. Warm if you respected it, dangerous if you didn't. I reached for the check before the entrees arrived. Harper noticed. What are you doing? Ending the double date, I said. Then I looked at her. Starting a better one if you're interested. Her eyebrows lifted. Ryan said, You're kidding. I didn't look at him. Harper leaned back in her chair, studying me with that sharp, tired, lovely face. A better one, she repeated. Dessert somewhere else, I said. Public place, your choice. No pressure, no vague hand gestures at your stomach. Her mouth twitched. That's a strong selling point. I'm leading with my best material. She looked past me at Ryan and Kelsey, then back at me. For the first time all night, her hand moved from her belly and rested on the table between us, palm down, close enough that I noticed the chipped pale blue polish on her nails. If I say yes, she said quietly, you should know something first. I nodded. Okay. Her eyes held mine, steady but guarded. The father isn't just gone, she said. He's the reason I almost didn't come tonight. I didn't ask the obvious question. That was the first thing Harper noticed. Most people, I think, would have leaned forward and said, What did he do? With the eager concern of someone hoping pain came with details. I just said, Thank you for telling me. Her guarded expression flickered. That's it? That's it for now? You don't want to know? I do, I admitted, but not more than I want you to feel safe saying no. For a moment, the noise of Marlowe's seemed to fade behind us. Forks on plates, low conversations, Ryan breathing indignantly through his nose. Harper looked down at her hand on the table. Mine was a few inches away, not touching, waiting. Then she said, "Dessert sounds good." I paid the bill over Ryan's protests because some endings deserved a clean cut. Outside, the evening had cooled and the sidewalk shone from earlier rain. Harper buttoned her coat slowly, one hand braced under her belly. "There's a place 2 blocks over," she said. "They have lemon cake that could fix a mediocre childhood." I had a decent childhood. Will it improve my credit score? Only if you order tea. We started walking. I kept my pace easy, matching hers without making a production of it. The city smelled like wet pavement and roasted garlic from the restaurants lining the street. A couple hurried past us under one umbrella, laughing when it turned inside out. Harper watched them, then glanced at me. "You're not going to ask if I'm okay every 30 seconds, are you? Would that annoy you?" "Yes." "Then no." "What if I'm not okay?" "Then you can tell me." She studied me sideways. "That's suspiciously reasonable." I hide my worst traits until date 3. Efficient. At the crosswalk, a gust of wind came hard around the corner. Harper's hair blew loose from its clip, and without thinking, I stepped slightly between her and the street spray from a passing car. She saw it. Of course she did. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I know." "Then why?" I looked at her, close enough now to see the tiny gold flecks in her eyes. "Because I wanted to." Her lips parted, just a little. The walk signal changed, but neither of us moved for half a second. Then she looked away first, smiling as if she wished she hadn't. The dessert place was called Juniper Spoon, narrow and warm, with mismatched chairs and a glass case full of cakes that looked too pretty to trust. Harper ordered lemon cake and chamomile tea. I got chocolate torte and coffee. We took a small table near the window. Outside, traffic passed in ribbons of light. "Okay," she said, unwrapping her scarf. "Your turn." "My turn?" Embarrassing truth. "I gave you the ex-father of my child warning. You owe me something." Ex-father of my child sounds like a terrible band. "Don't dodge, Miles." I liked the way she said my name, like she was testing it for weight, so I told her the truth. I was engaged. Her expression softened but didn't turn pitying. "What happened?" She realized she wanted a different life. Bigger city, bigger plans, someone who didn't smell like sawdust at formal events. That was her actual complaint. Paraphrased, though she did once say my truck made her feel like she was dating a contractor in a tragic indie film. Harper laughed, then covered her mouth when it turned into a tired little sigh. "Sorry," she said. "Laughing and breathing have recently become competing hobbies." "Take your time." She pressed a hand to her side until it passed. I waited, pretending not to watch too closely, but failing because everything about her had started to matter in a way I hadn't authorized. When she lowered her hand, our desserts arrived. Harper took one bite of lemon cake and closed her eyes. "That," she said, "is civilization." I slid my untouched torte a few inches toward her. "Want to test the rival government?" She narrowed her eyes. "Are you trying to lure me with cake? Is it working?" "Unfortunately." She took a bite from my fork. It was such a small thing. Her leaning across the table, her hand briefly covering mine to steady it, the warmth of her fingers against my knuckles. But my heart reacted like an idiot. Harper froze too, just for a second, her gaze dropping to where she was touching me, then she didn't pull away. "I wasn't going to come tonight," she said quietly. I set the fork down. "Because of him?" "Partly. Because of me, too." She looked out the window. "I'm 29, visibly pregnant, and apparently fascinating to people with poor manners. I thought dating was over for a while. Maybe years. Maybe until I figured out how to be someone's mother without disappearing as a woman." Her voice didn't break, but something in it bent. I wanted to reach for her. I didn't. Not yet. "You haven't disappeared," I said. Her eyes returned to mine. I swallowed. "I noticed you before I noticed anything else." "What did you notice?" That you looked like you might set fire to the restaurant with your mind. She laughed softly. And, I continued, because apparently honesty had taken the wheel, that I wanted to know what it would take to make you smile without having to earn it from a room full of idiots. The teasing left her face. That's a dangerous thing to say to a hormonal woman with cake access. I accept the risk. Her foot nudged mine under the table. Deliberate this time. You're very smooth for a man who owns more clamps than dress shirts. Who told you about the clamps? You make furniture. I'm extrapolating. Careful. Intelligence is attractive. Her smile turned slow. Good. There it was, the moment the night changed from salvage operation to date. Not because I had rescued her from embarrassment, because she had leaned forward and chosen to stay. We talked for another hour. About her classroom, my workshop, baby names she hated, the rocking chair her grandmother used to have. She admitted she craved oranges at midnight and had once cried over a hardware store commercial. I admitted I kept a list of beautiful wood grain patterns on my phone like other men kept gym selfies. Show me, she demanded. So I did. She moved her chair around the tiny table to sit beside me, shoulder brushing mine as she scrolled through photos of walnut slabs and maple burls. Her perfume was faint, something clean and warm. Her knee touched mine and stayed there. That one, she said, pointing. It looks like a storm. That piece became a dining table. Lucky family. I looked at her profile, the curve of her cheek lit by my phone. I could make you something, I said. She turned. We were close. Too close for casual. Not close enough. You offer custom furniture on all your first dates? No. Good. The single word landed low in my chest. Then her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen, and the color drained slightly from her face. I didn't read it. I only saw the name before she flipped it over. Graham. The father, I guessed. Harper took a breath, then another. When she looked up, she forced a smile that didn't belong to her. I should probably go, she said. I wanted to ask, I wanted to insist. Instead, I said, Can I walk you to your car? She hesitated. Then her hand slipped over mine, cool fingers curling once, briefly. Yes, she said. But because I want you to. Not because I need rescuing. I turned my hand beneath hers, palm to palm. Understood. Outside, the rain had stopped. We walked slowly to a blue hatchback parked beneath a sycamore tree. At her door, she faced me, one hand on the roof of the car. I had a good time, she said, almost like it surprised her. Me too. Her eyes searched mine. Even with the warning? Especially after the warning. That makes no sense. It does to me. She smiled, but it trembled at the edge. You're trouble, Miles Hart. I've been called worse. I know. She stepped closer, and for one breath, her belly brushed lightly against me before she rose on her toes and kissed my cheek. Soft, warm, lingering enough to be a choice. When she eased back, my hand lifted, stopping just short of her waist. She noticed. You can ask. Can I touch you? Her answer was to take my hand and place it gently at her side, above the curve of her belly. The intimacy of it nearly undid me. Call me, she said. I will. And Miles? Yeah? If your friend invites you on another blind date, I'm busy forever. Her laugh followed her into the car. Only after she drove away did I look back through the dark window of the dessert shop and see Ryan standing across the street, watching me like I just ruined his favorite joke. Ryan called me before I reached my truck. I let it ring. Then he texted, You seriously mad? I stared at the words under the streetlight, feeling the old habit tug at me. Smooth it over. Make a joke. Let him off the hook because we'd known each other since college, and apparently history was supposed to excuse cruelty. Instead, I typed back, Yes, 3 dots appeared. Vanished. Appeared again. Dude, it was supposed to be funny. I thought of Harper's fingers resting over mine, her voice when she'd said she didn't want to disappear as a woman. It wasn't. I put the phone away and drove home with the taste of coffee still on my tongue and the ghost of her kiss on my cheek. The next morning, I lasted until 8:17 before calling her. She answered on the fourth ring, breathless. If this is about an extended warranty, I'm emotionally unavailable. It's Miles. Oh, a pause. Softer. Hi. My hand tightened around the phone like I was 17 and useless. Hi. You waited 12 whole hours. Very restrained. I wanted to seem mysterious. You build tables and show women pictures of wood grain? Mystery may not be your brand. Cruel, but fair. She laughed, and the sound settled something in me I hadn't realized was braced. I stood in my workshop surrounded by half-finished cabinets, sunlight coming through high dusty windows. I was wondering if you'd have dinner with me. A real date this time. No audience. Tempting. But? But I have swollen ankles, 26 report cards to finish, and a baby currently using my ribcage as rental property. Then I'll adjust the offer. 2. Lunch, somewhere close to your school, 45 minutes. I'll bring food. You choose the place. Silence, then. You do that? I want to see you. Another pause, and when she answered, her voice had lost its armor. There's a bench behind the school near the community garden. Noon. I'll be there. Miles? Yeah? No mushrooms. I took notes. At noon, I found her behind a brick elementary school, sitting on a bench beneath a leafless maple, a stack of papers beside her and one hand curved over her stomach. She wore a blue cardigan over a floral dress, and her hair was down today, catching in the wind. My chest did that stupid thing again. I held up the paper bag. Turkey on sourdough, orange slices, lemon cookie. I panicked and bought 3 kinds of chips. Finally, she said, a man who understands courtship. I sat beside her, leaving a respectable inch between us. She looked at the gap. That's very Victorian of you. I'm trying not to assume. Her eyes warmed. Assume a little. So I shifted closer until our shoulders touched. It was ridiculous how good that felt. We ate while children shouted on the playground beyond the fence. Harper stole my barbecue chips after claiming she didn't want them. You said you bought 3 kinds, she said when I raised an eyebrow. This is natural selection. I'm learning a lot about you. That I'm a thief? That you're decisive? She smiled around an orange slice. After a while, she took a folded paper from her cardigan pocket and handed it to me. It was a child's drawing in purple crayon, a lopsided cat wearing a crown. One of my students made this for the baby, she said. She said every baby needs a royal guard. It's a good cat. It has 6 legs. Extra guard. Harper laughed, then leaned her head against my shoulder like it was an accident. It wasn't. I went very still. You can breathe, she murmured. I'm trying to be respectful. You're allowed to enjoy me leaning on you, Miles. There was no clever answer to that, so I turned my head slightly and breathed in the clean scent of her shampoo. I do, I said. Her hand found mine on the bench between us. She linked our fingers with careful pressure as if giving me time to pull away. I didn't. For several minutes we sat like that, shoulder to shoulder, watching a dozen children chase a soccer ball with no respect for team structure. Then Harper said, Graham texted last night. The name put a cold line through the warmth, but I kept my thumb moving gently over hers. Do you want to talk about it? He heard I was out. She gave a small, humorless smile. Portland is a city until it decides to be a village. I waited. He didn't hurt me, she said. Not like people assume. He just made everything feel temporary. His affection, his attention, his promises. When I told him I was pregnant, he said he needed space to process. Then he processed himself into a woman named Paige with a condo in Bend. I winced. Harper, I'm not telling you because I need you to hate him. I can multitask. That got a reluctant laugh. She squeezed my hand. I'm telling you because if we keep seeing each other, you should know I'm not interested in being someone's noble project. I don't want a man who thinks standing near me makes him good. I turned toward her. She lifted her head from my shoulder but didn't let go of my hand. I don't feel good standing near you, I said. I feel lucky and nervous and attracted enough that it's honestly inconvenient. Her eyes widened a fraction. That was very direct, she whispered. I can take it back and replace it with something about weather. Don't you dare. The bell rang inside the school, but she didn't move. I looked at her mouth. She noticed. Her gaze dropped to mine, too. Harper, I said, I'd like to kiss you. Her answer came on a breath. Good. I touched her cheek first, giving her every chance to change her mind. She leaned into my palm, then I kissed her. Not her cheek this time, her mouth. Softly at first, because we were on a school bench at lunchtime, and because some moments deserve gentleness. But she made a small sound, barely there, and her fingers tightened around mine. She kissed me back with a hunger that felt less like need and more like recognition. When we parted, her eyes stayed closed for one extra second. Well, she said faintly, yeah, that was extremely inappropriate for a community garden. I apologized to the radishes. She laughed, pressing her forehead briefly to my jaw. I rested my hand lightly at her back, and for that stolen minute, the world felt simple. Then her phone buzzed beside the report cards. She looked at it. Her face changed, but not as much as last night. This time, she didn't hide the screen. She turned it toward me. Unknown number. Tell your new guy he doesn't get to play, Daddy. Harper exhaled through her nose, tired more than frightened. He does this. Changes numbers when I block him. I felt anger rise, but her hand was still in mine, and I refused to let Graham become the center of our first real kiss. So I asked, what do you want to do right now? She stared at me, and something in her shoulders eased. Right now, she said. Right now. I want to finish my lunch with the man who kisses like he means it. My heart kicked. I can do that. She deleted the message, turned the phone face down, and took another chip from my bag like a queen collecting tribute. After lunch, I walked her to the side entrance. Before she went in, she caught my jacket in her fist and pulled me down for one more kiss, quicker but less cautious. For later, she said. I'll need clarification on when later begins. Her smile was wicked. Call me tonight and find out. I watched her disappear into the hallway, one hand on her belly, the other lifting in a small wave. Only then did I let myself check my phone. Another text from Ryan waited. You don't know what you're getting into with her. For the first time since I'd known him, I wondered if the joke hadn't been his idea after all. I didn't answer Ryan right away. You don't know what you're getting into with her. There were messages that wanted a response and messages that wanted control. I had spent enough time with Wood to know the difference between pressure that shaped something and pressure that cracked it. That night, Harper called at 8:03. You were promised clarification, she said. I leaned back against my kitchen counter, smiling like an idiot. About when later begins. It began 3 minutes ago, but I had to pee. Romance is alive. Barely. It's wearing compression socks. We talked for 2 hours. Not about Graham, not about Ryan, about everything else. The first book that made her cry. The scar on my thumb from a chisel I'd been too proud to put down. Her fear that she'd be bad at lullabies because she had a voice best suited for warning. Ships away from rocks. Sing anyway, I said. No. Coward. Insulting the pregnant woman. Bold strategy. I'm trying to keep the mystery alive. Near the end, her voice went quieter. Miles? Yeah? I liked today. So did I. I mean, I really liked it. A breath. That scares me a little. I stared at the dark window over my sink, seeing my own reflection and not quite recognizing the hope on my face. Me too, I said. Good. She sounded relieved. I don't want to be the only terrified person at the dance. You're not. The next afternoon, I met Ryan outside his office because if I did it over the phone, he could hide behind sarcasm. He came out in a navy coat, expression already defensive. You're being dramatic. Who told you about Harper? His jaw shifted. That was answer enough. I stepped closer, keeping my voice low. Was it Graham? Ryan looked away toward traffic. He's a client, sort of. We met through Kelsey's brother. He mentioned his ex was going on dates and said she'd been telling people all kinds of stuff about him. So you decided to humiliate her? I didn't think of it like that. That's the problem. Ryan shoved his hands in his pockets. He said she was manipulative, that she'd trapped some decent guy into raising his kid. The words hit hard, but not because I believed them, because I could hear Graham inside them, shaping Harper into something small enough for him to step over. And you believed him? Ryan's face reddened. I thought it would be funny. Awkward, yeah, but funny. I didn't know you'd go full white knight. I shook my head. That's still what you don't get. I'm not interested in her because she needs saving. I'm interested in her because she's Harper. Ryan had no comeback for that. Good. That evening, I drove to Harper's apartment with takeout noodles and a bag of oranges. She opened the door in leggings, an oversized sweater, and an expression that made my pulse trip. You brought tribute, she said. I was told citrus has diplomatic value. You may enter. Her place was small and warm, full of books, plants, and half-assembled baby things. A crib box leaned against one wall. Tiny folded onesies sat in stacks on the couch. There was a mug on the coffee table that said, I teach tiny humans to use glue responsibly. I loved it immediately because it was hers. We ate on the floor because she said chairs were a social construct invented by people with normal spines. After dinner, she tried to assemble a bookshelf while refusing to read the instructions. That piece is upside down, I said. She narrowed her eyes. Do not bring professional arrogance into my home. I'm a humble craftsman. You just whispered, oh no, at a wooden dowel. It was making poor choices. She laughed so hard she had to brace both hands on her belly. Then, suddenly, her face changed. I froze. What? She reached for my hand. Here. She placed my palm against the right side of her stomach. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then I felt it. A small, impossible push beneath my hand. My breath left me. Harper watched my face, her own expression softening into something unguarded and beautiful. Baby approves of noodles, she whispered. I couldn't speak at first. I just kept my hand there, feeling another tiny movement, aware of Harper's fingers resting over mine. I swallowed. That's amazing. Yeah, her eyes shone, but she smiled before the tears could fall. Also weird, there's a person in there rearranging furniture. Good taste runs in the family. She looked at me for a long moment. You don't have to be careful with every word, she said. I know this is complicated. I'm not afraid of complicated. What are you afraid of? The question slipped beneath my ribs. I looked down at our joined hands on her belly. Wanting more than I'm allowed to ask for. Harper went still. I forced myself to meet her eyes. I know this is new. I know the baby isn't mine. I know you have every reason to keep the door half closed. My voice roughened. But when I'm with you, I don't feel like I'm stepping into someone else's life. I feel like I've been invited to the first honest place I've been in years, her mouth trembled. Mouth. Miles. I'm not asking for promises you're not ready to make, I said. I'm just telling you, I'm here because I want you. Not the idea of helping you. Not the drama, you. For a second, the room held its breath. Then Harper shifted forward with some difficulty, caught my face between her hands, and kissed me. This kiss wasn't cautious. It wasn't stolen beside a school garden or pressed against a car door. It was warm and deep and full of all the things neither of us had known where to put. Her fingers slid into my hair. Mine settled carefully at her back, pulling her close enough that I could feel her heartbeat against me. When she broke away, she rested her forehead against mine. I want you too, she said. That's the problem. I'm willing to be a problem. She laughed, wet and quiet, and kissed me again. Later, we sat on her couch with my arm around her shoulders and her feet in my lap while I rubbed the arch of one foot. She pretended not to enjoy it for about 12 seconds. If you tell anyone I made that sound, she murmured, eyes closed, I'll deny it. It was a very dignified groan. I'm a classy woman. You threatened a bookshelf. It knew what it did. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. We both looked at it. Graham. Harper's body tensed, but she didn't want to reach for the phone. Instead, she looked at me. I don't want him in this room, she said. Then he isn't. She took a breath. I'm going to call my attorney tomorrow, not because I'm scared tonight, because I'm tired. I nodded. I'll sit with you while you do it if you want. I do. She slid her hand into mine. But after, we're getting pancakes. Legal strategy and pancakes. Strong second date. This is at least date 4. Are we counting the ambush dinner? I'm counting the moment you chose me in front of everyone. My throat tightened. I lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles. I'd choose you again. Harper's eyes softened. Then she tugged me down until my cheek rested gently against her belly and her fingers moved through my hair. The baby kicked once directly under my ear. Harper laughed. Someone wants attention. I closed my eyes, held there by her hand, her warmth, the quiet trust of the room. For the record, she said softly, I'm not disappearing. No, I said, turning my face to kiss the curve of her sweater. You're impossible to miss. And when she smiled down at me, I knew with absolute clarity that whatever came next, the center of the story was no longer the joke they'd tried to make. It was the woman who had stayed. And the man who was falling for her. The attorney's office smelled like coffee, printer ink, and the kind of calm people pay for when their lives get messy. Harper sat beside me with a folder in her lap, one hand resting on her belly. She had dressed like she was going into battle. Black dress, red lipstick, low boots, hair pinned back. I had never seen anyone look more beautiful while filling out paperwork. You're staring, she murmured. I'm appreciating the general atmosphere. The general atmosphere has cankles. The general atmosphere is radiant. She tried not to smile and failed. You're ridiculous. Consistently. Her attorney, a direct woman named Marisol, helped Harper document the messages and file for clear boundaries before the baby came. Graham had rights to pursue if he wanted them, Marisol explained, but harassment was not a parenting plan. Harper listened carefully. She asked questions, her voice shook once, and when it did, she reached for my hand under the table. Not because she needed me to speak for her, because she wanted me there while she spoke for herself. Afterward, we got pancakes like she'd promised. She drowned hers in blueberry syrup and stole my bacon with no remorse. That's theft, I said. That's pregnancy. You can't use the baby as an accomplice forever. Watch me. I loved her then, not in a sudden lightning strike way, in a quiet, terrifying, ordinary way. Across a diner table with syrup on her thumb and determination in her eyes, I realized my heart had stopped asking permission. A week later, Ryan showed up at my workshop. I was sanding a walnut tabletop when he walked in, hands in his coat pockets, looking like a man who had rehearsed an apology and hated every version. I talked to Kelsey, he said. I turned off the sander. Congratulations. She's furious with me. She has taste. He winced. I deserve that. I waited. Ryan looked around the shop at the boards stacked along the wall, the clamps, the sawdust, and the light. I was cruel. To you, but mostly to Harper. I let some guy I barely knew make me feel smart for being suspicious of her. He swallowed. I'm sorry. The apology didn't fix it. It didn't erase Harper walking into that restaurant and finding a table full of people waiting for her to be humiliated, but it was a start. You need to tell her, I said. I will. And if she doesn't forgive you, I'll accept it. For the first time in weeks, I believed he meant something. Graham faded after Marisol's letter. Not disappeared exactly. Men like that rarely vanish on command. But he stopped texting from unknown numbers and started communicating through proper channels when necessary. The relief on Harper's face the first night her phone stayed silent was so deep it made me ache. We spent that evening in my workshop. She sat in an old armchair near the heater, wrapped in a blanket, watching me work on a rocking chair made from cherry wood. I had started it without telling her because some confessions are easier with your hands. That's not for a client, she said. No. For your house? No, her eyes narrowed. Miles. I set down the plane and wiped my palms on my jeans. It's for you, if you want it. Her face changed, all teasing gone. I stepped closer, nervous in a way I hadn't been since the first time I'd kissed her. Not because I think a chair proves anything, just because your grandmother had one and you mentioned missing it, and I wanted you to have a place to sit with the baby where you felt held. Harper pressed her lips together. Tears filled her eyes. I'm blaming hormones, she whispered. You can. She held out her hand. I crossed the space and took it. She tugged me down until I knelt in front of her, and then she kissed me, slow and trembling, her fingers warm against my jaw. When she pulled back, she whispered, I love you. Everything in me went still, then bright. You don't have to say it back if I love you, I said so fast she laughed through her tears. I love you, Harper Wells. I'm trying not to scare you with the full extent. Scare me a little. So I did. I told her I loved her laugh, her stubbornness, the way she talked to her students like they were full people in small shoes. I told her I loved the baby's midnight kicks and her terrible singing, and the fact that she still believed in showing up after people gave her reasons not to. She cried harder. Then she said, You realize I look like a planet right now? My favorite planet. That was almost romantic. I panicked. She pulled me in for another kiss anyway. 6 weeks later, I got a call at 3 a.m. Miles, Harper breathed. Either I wet the bed in a very dramatic way or it's time. I beat every speed limit in my mind, but none on the road. At the hospital, she gripped my hand and threatened to break several of my fingers. I told her she could have the whole hand if she wanted. She called me sweet and then called me something the nurse politely pretended not to hear. Hours blurred. Sweat on her forehead, my lips against her knuckles. Her eyes finding mine whenever fear tried to take over. You're here? She gasped once. I'm here. Still choose me? I bent close, my forehead to hers. Every time. Our daughter was born just after sunrise. Not mine by blood. Mine by the first sound she made and the way Harper looked at me when the nurse placed that tiny, furious miracle on her chest. Meet Iris, Harper whispered. Iris had a red face, dark hair, and the offended expression of someone who had been removed from a warm apartment without consent. She's perfect, I said, my voice breaking. Harper looked up at me, exhausted and glowing. Do you want to hold her? I did. I was terrified. I held out my arms anyway. A year after that night at Marlowe's, the rocking chair sat by the window in Harper's apartment. Our apartment now. Rain tapped softly against the glass. Iris slept against my chest, one tiny fist curled in my shirt. Harper was tucked beside me, her head on my shoulder, humming off key because love had made her brave enough to sing. The cherrywood chair rocked beneath us, steady and quiet. Harper tilted her face up. Remember our first date? The ambush or the cake? The moment you looked at me like I wasn't the joke. I kissed her forehead. You never were. Outside, the city blurred silver in the rain. Inside, Harper's hand rested over mine on our sleeping daughter's back. And I thought about that table, that awful silence, the cruelty dressed up as humor. They had expected me to laugh. Instead, I found the love of my life. What would you have done if your friends set you up with someone as a joke, expecting you to embarrass her in front of everyone? Have you ever experienced something similar where people tried to make you or someone else the punchline? Tell me your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.